G'day, I'm Pete, I'm the Aussie Bush Cop. In 2012, I retired from the New South Wales Police because of mental health issues. And now I get to live on beautiful King Island where I'm a homesteader. I have beautiful dogs like this. And I'd like to share with some of my stories with you. When we're going in through into the police station, my nostrils were arrested by an offensive stench. G'day everybody, thanks for joining me again in the barn. If you're watching this for the first time and you watch right through to the end, there'll be a link at the end where you can see all of our other videos. And just click on that and you can see a whole bunch of them. What I have for you today is a lot of people, when they think about the police, they think there's a lot of paperwork, and they're absolutely correct. But this story, the first story I have for you today, is about an arrest I made where there was pretty close to zero paperwork and the matter was all finalised within hours. So what happened was that in the police, it's pretty regular, even for general duties police like I was, to become involved in an operation. And that just means can mean there's just a particular focus for a shift on certain things. And this operation that I was involved in was just heavy vehicles. So we were under instructions to pull over heavy vehicles and check them for roadworthiness and the validity of the driver's licence. So what I did, I had a spot where it was easy to pull trucks over. There was a big area that was actually designed for trucks and cars to pull over and have a rest. So it was on a highway, and I would just put the lights on at the appropriate spot, and these trucks probably knew that it was there and they'd pull over. So I've been doing a lot of this, and the particular truck that I'm going to tell you about was a removalist truck. And I pulled this truck over, and the truck driver was, you could almost tell that he was a removalist because he had the biggest thighs. He had shorts on and he had really well pronounced thighs, the sort of thighs that a bodybuilder would love to have. But he was immediately upset. As soon as he stopped, I got out of my vehicle and I walked up and he opened up the door. He was distressed because he told me that he didn't have a licence. Not only that, he was disqualified from having a licence, which is with regard to traffic matters, it's a pretty serious one. And I then had no choice but to take him into custody and take him back to the big police station and charge him. When police charge people, it's not the charging police's decision as to what happens after that with regard to bail. It's always referred to another officer who's not connected with the case. And because this man's traffic record was so bad, he was bail refused. And so he was then, in these big police stations, they have corrective service officers there, which means, well, back then, Her Majesty's Prison. It's now His Majesty's Prison. And he immediately went into Her Majesty's establishment, which is under the same roof as the police station. You might think it's just a technical difference, but actually it's not. It's more than technical. This fellow was then taken immediately before the court because the police bail refused him. He then got to go before the court, and where a magistrate will make a decision about, for one thing, bail. But this man was so keen to have the matter finalised. I wasn't there, but he told the magistrate he wanted the matter finalised that day. And he knew he faced going to prison. The magistrate gave him a suspended jail sentence, and it was all, so he was arrested, charged, and sentenced all within hours of each other. And I can tell you that is very rare. In fact, it only ever happened to me once. But so the next story, I just got to check my phone and look for notes. The next story is involves a very common offence for police to deal with, general duties police, of shoplifting. So what normally happens is that the person is detected stealing in a shop and then lawfully detained by a member of staff there, and then they call the police, and they have the power to do that. In fact, we all have the power of citizens' power of arrest. So this young girl, meaning young, she was under 18 years old. We went there and we took her into custody, and all I was ever going to do, because we checked her record, we do that over the radio, and she was what you call a clean skin, never come under any notice before. And all I was ever going to do was give her a warning. But that warning has got to be done in the presence of a responsible adult, and that was going to be her mother. When we were going in, we just took her in through the normal pedestrian access into the station, like the normal public access into the station. We didn't go through the van dock and through the charge room and all of that. And I was just simply going to give the warning to her in one of the offices in this big police station in the presence of her mother. When we're going in through into the police station, my nostrils were arrested by an offensive stench. And I looked down as she walked in front of me through the door. She had on a pair of tight-fitting slacks. It was immediately obvious that she'd pooed herself, defecated her pants. She was so scared. And so we quickly, you might say, expedited the whole process and got her out of there because she'd already learnt her lesson. Another time when something similar happened was one night. It was a Friday or Saturday night. I remember it was a really, really busy night. And there was a job that came over the radio about a fight that was happening between two groups of people on the street, in the main street. And one of them had pulled a slat off one of the public seats and was using it as a weapon. By the time we got there, most of the parties had dissipated, left. And what we came across was a young man who was wearing a pair of, I remember they were bone-coloured shorts, those shorts that come down to about your knees. And he didn't want any action taken. He just wanted to get out of there and to be taken home. Okay, mate, no worries. So we put him into the back of the truck to take him somewhere else, probably home. And as he was going in through the back of the truck, again, my nostrils were arrested by a horrible stench. And he'd defecated himself. And because of his shorts, I could see it was running down the back of his leg. It was just horrible. Anyway, we took him home, and then that was the end of the matter, sort of. But it would have been probably months later, the local agricultural show was on. Now this fellow was, what's the usual expression, known to police. And someone from the show told us that they'd seen this fellow jump over the fence to get into the show without paying. And so we found him, and he was with a bunch of his mates. And he was being the typical, cock rooster, being cheeky and full of bravado. And all we were going to do was show him the gate and tell him to go. And if he wanted to come in, he had to pay. But he was just being very cheeky. So to bring him down a peg or two, I said to him, mate, I remember a few months ago out on the street and you pooped yourself. Anyway, he said, yeah, well, you would too if someone had trying to belt you with a lump of wood. So that's how I sort of dealt with him. So the last story I have for you today is another traffic matter. And this happened right towards the end of my shift. And it was after midnight. And I was called to a job where there was a car on a highway just stopped on the highway. and truck drivers had seen it and rang up to report it. And I wasn't in a very good mood, I can tell you, because the last thing I wanted towards the end of your shift is to go out and deal with a job that was going to take me into overtime. I wasn't interested in overtime. I just wanted to finish and go home. So I drove out and I kept driving and driving and driving, and I actually drove into the next command. Now, of course, I'm still a policeman in the next command, and so there was, sure enough, there was this car stopped on the highway. And I thought, what is wrong with this bloke? And when I pulled up and I saw someone in the car, I thought it was going to be a deceased matter. Because I thought, why would you still be sitting in your car? So I walked over, but no, he wasn't deceased. He was just sitting in his car. I said, mate, what are you doing? Why are you on the highway? Why are you stopped on the... And he was on a hill. And so he said, oh, mate, I've run out of fuel. I said, all you've got to do is put it into neutral, take your foot off the brake and you can just roll to the side of the road. Why haven't you done that? And he sort of just gave me a nonsensical answer. So he did that. I gave the car a bit of a shove and he just rolled to the side of the road. And then said, show me your licence. He says, I'm disqualified. I haven't got one. Well, that's a problem. So you have to come into custody. So I arrested him, put him before I put him into the back of the truck. I said, you need to take anything valuable out of the vehicle and bring it with you. And he didn't want to take anything with him, and I had my torch and I shone it on something. I thought it was a briefcase in the back seat of his car. I said, you better bring that with you. But it was actually a laptop computer. So I put it in the back seat of my truck and he went into the cage. And we drove a fair way back to the police station, to the big police station where I could process him. When I got back there, as I said, it was after midnight. And the police, when I walked into the charge room with this prisoner, and they looked at his name and they said, Pete, how'd you come across this bloke? And I told them. And what had happened was that there was a special operation where he was the suspect, or one of the suspects in this operation. And he was a suspect in child sex offences. So then his his laptop computer became a great point of interest. What was on the computer? These police then made a phone call to an on-call inspector, a detective inspector, and it was her advice that we legally could access this laptop computer to see if it contained anything criminal. Fortunately, I didn't have to look at it. That was given to other police. But what it contained, I found out later, was it contained pornography, adult pornography. Fortunately, no child pornography. So that's just what happens when you come across people in the middle of the night, and I've got no idea why he was stopped where he was stopped, and that just was rather perplexing to me. So that's what happened with him, and he was I guess he got his computer back and he went back to his miserable life, and he was convicted of being a disqualified driver. So thanks for watching, and if you want to see more of my videos, just continue to look at the link at the end of this one and you'll see a whole lot more of them.